Today we're going to make our grab handle. So I have my grab handle panel, and I've got this is made in faux leather. Now you could make this in fabric, but it would be a little bit floppy, so you may need to, if you did it in fabric, you would need to add a little bit of something extra to stabilize it. When we get to the point where you would add that, I'll show you what I mean. Ideally this was designed really to be done with faux leather. So I've made a mark centrally on the wrong side from one short end to the other, and I've added some double-sided tape. Now you can see I've started my double-sided tape about 2 inches away from the end, and there's a good reason for that. You'll see shortly why that's done. Now I have my 2 rectangles. Now the one thing you need to be careful of is that rectangles often have a slight curve to them, and you want the curves on these to be going the opposite way, so they sort of, one's coming this way and one's coming that way. So I hold them that way so that I know that I've got them the right way. I'm just going to fold this panel a little bit so that I can thread those rectangles on. So that's literally just threaded on, nothing more. I'm just going to position them more or less centrally, and I'm going to take the 2 ends without twisting my strap. I'm going to take the 2 ends and I'm going to lay them, I nearly did that wrong. I nearly did that way. I'm going to lay them right sides together, but at an angle. So let me just, so they're right sides together, and they're at a, you can see that this corner is at an angle to the other one. It's at 45 degrees. It's actually at 90 degrees, I'm lying. And I'm going to just clip that together. The corners have to match, so, and the sides match. I find a little clip when I want one. So you can see from that side, your corners, your top corner is matching and everything's matching on the side, and it looks exactly the same on the other side. Now if you want to mark a line, the line needs to go from this corner to the point where that corner is on the other side. So you can mark a line that goes at 45 degrees. So it goes from this corner to a point that's 2 inches down this long side. I'm not going to mark that line. Actually, let's do it. Let's just do it. At least if you do it, you know that you're stitching exactly in the right place. I will admit that I don't usually. But you can see there I've drawn a line that goes from this corner, and this end is at the point where that corner of the bit underneath is. I'm going to stitch down that line. And now you maybe have figured out why we didn't put the double-sided tape right to the end. Just a couple of back stitches at the beginning and the end to secure my threads. Take off those clips, and then the bit above, so there's a sort of a triangle of fabric above the stitch line. I'm going to trim about 3/8 of an inch away from that, from the stitch line. And then what I've created is a hoop with my 2 pieces of hardware on. I'm going to open up that seam allowance. I'm going to finger press it. If you've got a metal roller, you could use a metal roller. And I'm going to, you have to kind of manipulate this, but I'm going to stitch down either side of that seam allowance just to hold that seam allowance open. And I'm stitching about 1/8 of an inch away from the join that we've made. I'm not back stitching because the ends of that line of stitching will be hidden inside of our handle. So one side, just finger press and make sure that the seam allowance is open underneath there. otherwise your stitches are for nothing. So now you can see that that seam allowance is all sitting nice and flat inside, and now you can see why we didn't take the double-sided tape right up. It goes underneath here and it's ever so difficult to get the ends out. So if you start 2 inches away from either end, you've actually got double-sided tape where you need it. Trying to put it on after you've done that join is really quite difficult. I've tried it because I forgot to put it on once, and it's not something I would want to do again. So I'm just getting rid of my thread ends. You can see we've got a hoop with 2 pieces of hardware on. So I'm going to now probably swear a bit as I try and take the ends. Oh no, that one's come off okay. I'm just going to take one side off at a time of the double-sided tape. You may have to move your hardware to be able to get to it. It's a little bit fiddly, but it is perfectly doable. And then I'm going to fold my side of my strap in towards that center line. Now I am going to use some clips just to hold this in place, even though I've got glue. I've got the double-sided tape, should I say. My faux leather is quite strong and quite bouncy, and it kind of resists being folded, so a few clips will just give it a bit of extra encouragement. So I'm just folding them. Oops, I've got a thread. Folding the side, the first side, into the central line, and I'm going to just move my hardware as I go so that it's not in the way. You do have to just kind of manipulate the strap through. Now this is the way I also make wrist straps. So for those of you that have done any of my patterns before, you'll probably find this quite familiar, because we've done this before when we've made wrist straps. So there you can see we have one side folded in, and I'm just going to do exactly the same on the other side. So I'm going to take that bit of double-sided tape off. And this is quite thin double-sided tape. It's only 1/8 of an inch. I believe it's used in mobile phone manufacturing. And I'm going to fold that second side, wrong sides together, into that center mark. And because we did a mitered join, so our join that we made to make the circle was at an angle, we should have not too many big thick parts. If you just do a straight join, you end up with one area of this strap which is really bulky. But as a mitered join, you end up with a much nicer, well, you still get a thick patch, you still get a bit where it's thicker, but it's not 4 or 5 layers of faux leather, as opposed to it's only a couple of layers. So I just think it looks nicer. So again, we're just folding all the way into the middle. And pushing it down. And the 2 raw edges should butt up against each other. I think you can see that they're almost well, they are touching. You get to the point where your hardware is, you can either move it out of the way or just kind of jiggle around it. And you can put as many or as few clips on here as you feel comfortable with. I know some people like to use loads and loads. I'm not a great user. I don't use as many as I probably should do. But there we go. That's a full circle with our 2 pieces of hardware on. Now what we're going to do is we're going to just fold that so that the raw edge joins are inside of our circle, so they're centrally. And I'm going to find that point where I've got my mitered join. I'm going to kind of hold on to that and push my strap down so that it's pretty much central. Now, what I need to do, whoop daisy, is take some of these clips out so that I can move my hardware. So my hardware, you can see, is at this end, and I'm just going to move one of my D-rings so that I've got the D-rings one on each end. I want to manipulate that so that my join is pretty much central. So I'm just gonna so you can see the join is now more or less centrally between the two pieces of hardware. So I'm just gonna reclip. But I'm clipping so that the two sides are together, so I'm making one long handle. And there we go, one perfect handle. And now what we're going to do is we are going to stitch across, down, back and up to the other way, right back up to where we started. Now this is a faux leather handle and I don't feel it needs any extra stabilizer. If you've done yours in fabric, what you can do is add a small strip of Decaville light inside of between the two layers. Now, oops, my handle is actually, if you were to cut a piece of Decaville light that was 6.5 by, I don't know, 5/8 and just slid it into the middle, you could actually even unfold slightly and put it in between the folds. That will give you a bit of extra structure. You don't want the handle to be rigid. This isn't going to be a rigid handle. You want it to be able to bend, but you don't want it floppy. So if you wanted to do your handle in fabric, you could do it in fabric and just add a little bit of extra if you wanted to. So I'm just going to do the stitching on here, and because we don't have anywhere we can hide and bury our threads, I'm just going to do one back stitch at the beginning to secure my threads, and go as near to your hardware as you can and take this slowly. Slowly as you go over those joins that you've made, that mitered join. To go across a little bit further. That's better. Oh, not sure where I dropped. I'll pick it up in a minute there. And then we're stitching at an 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. And there we have our handle. It's just, in faux leather, it's actually still it's got a fair amount of stabilizer. It's fairly stable. It doesn't need anything extra. If you wanted to add extra, then you could do, if you're doing fabric, it's up to you. Now, it's really very much a personal preference whether you have the join on the top or underneath. If you don't want it to show, then obviously you put it underneath. I quite like it on the top. It doesn't bother me either way, because it is central. It just becomes a sort of a feature. But that's your handle created. So we'll come back and have a look at the next stage in a second.